And if I would ask her over the phone, who are you voting for this time? She would say, no, we're not speaking of this on the phone. This is not on the phone. You're going to speak about this when we meet in person because they are listening. And I was like, who are they? Who cares? He says to me with a straight, serious face, he says, do you speak Eastern European? There was this meme that was circulating about how Romanians are thieves. I bet your parents, they came to steal and they came to do this. And I tell them, well, they came from education. Like, I've got a mom who's a doctor, or there were times in my life when I actually had to go to the police. And this is a little bit more serious when it comes to direct threats.
Good evening, and thank you for giving me the time, Faiza.
Good evening, and thank you for having me on this podcast. It's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So tonight, Faizah Muhammad. Faiza wrote a book about the Romanian Revolution. I have to say, living it still feels kind of real and unreal for me as well. So if I think about the stories behind it, I still think it happened. Did it really happen or not? And before we go into detail into discussion, I want to ask you, why the revolution, Faiza?
So I'm from Timișoara. And this is the city where the revolution started. So when I was growing up, I used to hear the stories about the revolution pretty much all the time. So everyone around me, neighbors and people that had actually lived through it, they would constantly tell me about what it was like. And I created this idea in my head about it anyway. And I was really fascinated by it. I always loved history. But the actual story of the book, so the characters and, the rest of the storyline, it came to me in a dream. And I kind of dreamt a part of the book, and the rest of it kind of just happened by itself. And it was during a time when I was like really homesick. I had just moved to England. I was really, really homesick, and I was thinking about doing something for Romania in a way to feel more connected to it. And I think because of that, subconsciously, I was probably thinking about home as well, which is why I dreamt about Timișoara and the revolution and a story about that. And it hit me so profoundly that I knew that I needed to get it on paper. Like I couldn't live without getting it out in some form. And I wrote it as a script, first of all. So the story came to me as a, kind of a film in my head. So I wrote it as a script, and then the book adaptation after that. But yeah, that's kind of how it happened.
That's it's really interesting. Of course, you know it from the stories, and I think it's important that everyone talked about it. And I think everyone still talks about it. So it's not something like it will disappear at least in the next centuries, or at least the in the time when we will be alive.
Yeah.
But back to the story. Before we dig into the book, I want to go back to the story. You said you are from Timișoara.
Yes.
As far as my research told me, you were born in Timișoara, right?
Yes.
You were born in Timișoara. You're still living in Timișoara?
So I travel between England and Timișoara pretty often because I'm completing my university in the UK. I moved there for studies, so I travel between home and England quite often.
Okay, this is okay, really nice. I didn't know about the studies. I knew that you were traveling to England, but I didn't know it was because of the studies. Tell me a bit about your background. Are your parents originally from the area of from Banat, or?
No. So this is where it gets a little bit crazy. My mom moved to Timișoara to study medicine. So she came from India, and my father was from Pakistan, and he came to Romania to study engineering. So both of them were university students, and that's how they met. But yeah, neither one of them are from the area, but they fell in love with Romania. I mean, they moved to Romania just for education, and being from countries with such a difficult history and background. Like if you ask anyone about India and Pakistan,
yeah,
that's a completely different discussion for another podcast. You can make a separate episode on that. So because of that, I think on one hand, it was also easier for them to settle down somewhere separate from, the background with the conflict and all that stuff. But at the same time, they did fall in love with Romania as well. They fell in love with the people here. I mean, my mom, when we moved to England, she was so homesick for Romania, and she never missed India in the way that she missed Romania when we moved to England. And it was the people and the warmth and kind of this thing that I don't think you can find that kind of feeling anywhere else in the world. It's truly like a home kind of feeling. And that's kind of how they settled down here.
But did they move to Romania before the revolution?
No, so they moved in the 90s. So it was
Okay, so
exactly after the revolution. So it was during kind of that post-communist era where Romania
wow,
was
that's
facing
interesting.
it was kind of that transition period between communism and kind of Romania catching up with the 21st century almost, kind of leading up to that. So like my mom, she learned Romanian from the elderly women. So she didn't ever go to a course to learn Romanian. So she moved from India at the age of 18, didn't speak a word of Romanian. And the way that she learned it was from, we call them the babe at the piazza.
Yeah,
So
yeah, we know them. Yeah.
the ladies at the market. And kind of with that as well, she learned a lot about the culture and the background of Romania. And I think she, even to this day, after getting Romanian citizenship now, after being here for such a long time, she still loves the culture and respects it so much. It's something, it's really unique to kind of go into a country and fall in love with the people and the culture and the language and everything else like that. So yeah, she's probably like the closest kind of tie that I have because she always wanted me to learn as much as I could about history and about other things.
So first of all, the history between India and Pakistan. Not only I think we cannot do only podcasts. We can write books, and I think there are
Oh
books
yeah.
written, and I think they still have a history there. So who knows a bit of history, you know that there is a huge story to tell there. And I have to say, I'm kind of surprised about, because I have to tell a bit of a background story why I'm so surprised, because we spoke in the pre-alignment call, we spoke before the call, we spoke Romania. Romania is spotless. So I know you're born in Romania, but still, now knowing your history, I think, oh my God, your Romanian is so good. Because I really thought there's an honest thing when I thought, okay, I thought your parents are really coming from there, because I think the name doesn't really say anything from my point of view, because the name is always a personal preference of whomever is giving the name to the kid.
Yeah.
So I say the name itself doesn't really represent the ethnicity, and it has nothing to do with the ethnicity. That's why I had a shock moment, because I realized that you're a native, of course. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
well, no, Romanian is my first language. I
Mm-hmm.
I speak 6 languages. But
Oh, cool.
but yeah, it's because of the
Congrats.
multicultural. Thank you. It's because again, my mom, she insisted that I learned that many languages when I was young. The more I talk about the things that I do, the more I realize I should be thanking my mom more often for this stuff because yeah, but when I was a kid, because I was growing up near Romanians mainly, so I was living like in a neighborhood. There were no other Indian kids or Pakistani kids. It was just me and then the Romanian kids and Romanian families. And we were the only brown family, I think, in the entire neighborhood. And obviously growing up around Romanians, I caught up with Romanian pretty quickly. That was the first language that I had any kind of connection with. My nanny was Romanian. The people that I was talking to, they were all Romanian, and I spoke Romanian fluently and a bit of English. And by age 3, I didn't speak my parents' languages at all. So I didn't speak a word of Hindi or Urdu or Punjabi, which are from India and Pakistan. And my mom, she came up with a technique to teach me that if I would speak to her, so me as a 3-year-old, by the way, if I would say to her, vreau apă, so I want water in Romanian, she wouldn't give it to me until I would say it in her language, in one of their languages. And if I said it in Hindi and I would say pani do, so give me water, same thing, even if it was wrong or even if it was just one word, she would be like, okay, but you have to do it. So she kind of forced me into learning another language. I know it's not as brutal as it sounds, the way that I made it sound with the water. She did not starve me or anything. Don't think that she did that. But if it was like conversation, she wouldn't reply until I tried to. It was the trying thing. It wasn't about getting it right or about saying it perfectly, but just try and say it. And that's how I learned the other languages as well.
This is a really cool technique. Look, I have a 3-year-old. I have an 8-year-old boy. You said 3 years, and you got me connected there. So I have an 8-year-old boy, and somehow he
Wow.
managed to speak his main language as English. He speaks German as well because he goes to school here, so he learns the language. And we're still struggling with Romanian. And this is a good technique. I will try to see what's
Yeah.
happening.
Is your wife also Romanian, or is
Yeah.
she? Oh, okay.
No. So, and he actually asked us, I've said this story in the podcast before, but he actually asked us, I was born in Germany, you are Romanian, why do I speak English? I'm not able to answer. So it's his mother language. We are both not Romanian. So
maybe films and TV. At least that's how English is, Disney films and
he's going also he went to a kindergarten who had they had some native English speakers, which helped a lot. So, and now in the school also his main teacher is I think she's from Canada or something like this. So that helps a lot. Like that helps a lot with developing the language. But still, I still think, like you said, I still think it's important that he speaks more than one language, more than 2 languages. I think any language that you have an extra in your vocabulary, it's a huge advantage that nobody can really evaluate.
Absolutely. And I think Romanians are really good at learning languages, at least from the ones that I have seen. So many people, they speak Italian, Spanish, French, German, Russian, Serbian in this area, especially near Banat, Serbian, Hungarian. They're gonna get so many languages, and it's really the Romanian language is really interesting. Like if you look at the roots of the Romanian language, it's really, really interesting how it's considered, a Romance language, and they say it's the same as Latin. And then you look at the other ones, and I think Romanian's, like, out of all the other languages, it's like the sibling that doesn't look like the rest. It doesn't look like the parent. It's just kind of there. You're wondering if it's adopted.
Yeah,
so,
we have the we have the Roman letter, the Latin letters, like the normal ones. Then you have also the Russian influences, like the the characters which are not that common to a normal language. I think that's why it makes it for Italians hard to understand us, but it makes it for us easy to understand them because they don't have anything extra except our words. But my wife keeps saying that you feel that somehow Italian is a made up Romanian because just an O at the end and it's Italian, like.
You just kind of try and butcher it, and it's
exactly, and then you make it. I mean, you don't fit it 100% of the cases, but you fit it 80% of the cases. 100%.
I've got a family friend, and he's in his 70s, and he's Italian, like 100% born and raised, lived his entire life in Italy, and he's married to a Romanian woman who's also like a really, really good family friend. And whenever we meet with them, I speak to him in Romanian and he speaks back in Italian, and we're having a conversation. Like it's like he kind of knows, because his wife is Romanian, so he kind of knows what I'm saying. I know what he's saying, but it's just like 2 different languages.
Correct. Faiza, we could go on this rabbit hole really, really deep, but I want to come back to the book. To the reason why we met today. You said your mother studied medicine, your father studied engineering, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Was storytelling part of their hobbies? Or is it something which is only yours?
Well, I always liked books when I was a kid. I think it's partially because I didn't grow up in the phone era, so I didn't have parents who had, screens all the time or anything. My parents still had the button phone, so it wasn't interesting to me in any way. Now saying that sounds really crazy, but my parents, they did insist on me reading books pretty early on because I had a clear interest for books. I always loved reading. And from the second that I kind of started to learn how to write alphabets, I used to do this thing with papers. I used to try and glue papers together in my own room. And I used to try and make my own books. And my mom was like, okay, this one's going to be an author because she likes doing this. Like, you see a 3 or 4-year-old trying to stick together their own books. And she was very supportive of it. I know there are a lot of parents, when they see that their kids are leaning towards the arts and they're trying to do something that's more creative, they're just like, no. But no.
You have to study. So you have to study. Math school is important. That everything else is just fun.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my mom's background was kind of like that because she didn't want to study medicine. She was, kind of pushed by the family that she would have to study medicine because she needs to become a doctor. She needs to do that. And I think both of my parents, they kind of had this thing that they didn't want to force anything on me or my sister. I've got a younger sister as well. So they didn't want to force any kind of thing on us. They were just like, okay, you want to do this? It's your choice. Like you do whatever you want to do. I can't say that they used to write or they had like a specific thing towards it. They were just really supportive of me doing it and always kind of bought me books. But my mom's side of the family, they do have a history of writers. They're people that I've never met. I've never been to India or to Pakistan, but there are people from like my extended side of the family, people that I don't know of who my mom knows that, they're authors, they're in journalism or they try to do creative writing. So maybe somehow I inherited that gene somewhere along the line. But other than that, I can't say that I was kind of influenced by anybody else in the family in any other way.
For the sake of the curiosity of the whomever is watching this, can you all please share what you're studying? Because I love the fact that it has nothing to do with writing.
So I'm doing a master's degree in astrophysics and space
Oh
science.
my god! If that's something which is further away, it's like on the other
Yeah.
side of the moon.
Yeah, I know a lot of people ask me, were you forced by your family to do something sciencey or they tell you to do this? No, I wasn't. When I was a kid, I really loved stuff with space and somehow I also was kind of good at physics and maths and stuff. Like I really love maths. I really love doing maths. That's like I really do love and enjoy physics and maths and that side of things. I'm not very good at biology or kind of these sciences where you kind of have to learn a lot, but I was good at doing maths, more logical stuff. Because of that I wanted to do a degree that was kind of leaning towards that side, just to try something different, to have something else to do alongside the writing stuff. I do think it's best to get as many kind of different skills that you can get instead of kind of doing the same thing, even as a course, even as a career. So I think on one hand, it did help me kind of try something different, do something new, and experiment with this kind of thing.
You said you are studying in UK, Faiza. So so many questions. Your name doesn't say Romanian, right? So you moved to UK. I'm pretty sure everyone asked you, said you are from Romania. Your name doesn't say that, but you said you are Romanian. What was their opinion about Romania? What was the feeling that you got there about Romania?
Oh, I have so many stories. Um, which one do I start with? So this is
I
my
don't know.
favorite
Pick
one.
one.
This is my favorite one, and I've said this along just whenever I've been at like interviews and stuff before. I've mentioned this, so maybe some people who are watching, maybe they've heard me talking about this before. But I remember when I went to school in England, and it was kind of the beginning of when I started, and I was still meeting new people, and I was still kind of getting to know everyone. I remember I met this guy who was in one of my math classes, and he asked me, okay, where are you from? And I said, Romania. And he said, with a straight face, by the way, and this is a guy who was studying maths, geography, and something else. So geography, keep in mind geography, right? And he says to me, with a straight, serious face, he says, do you speak Eastern European? And I was just like, what's that? Yeah, I was just like, that's funny. Like, you just, Eastern European. And he's like, oh, of course you don't speak Eastern European, he says, because Romania is not in Bulgaria, is it? It's in a separate country. And I was just like, Romania and Bulgaria are two separate places. They are not, neither one is in the other. But yeah, geography. Keep in
Look,
mind.
I had my share of uh, I don't know, lack of knowledge, laziness, ignorance. I don't know how to call it. Like there, I have no real word for it. But this misunderstanding between, or the confusion between Romania and Bulgaria, I had the most. So I had my former boss ask me really often if I was in Bulgaria, if how was the visit at home when I was going home, and this got me so annoyed. And I wanted to ask you, was this the stereotype that annoy you the most while being in UK about Romania, or something else?
Oh, there are worse ones. Oh, there are worse ones. I remember there was a time when a few friends from my friend group, there was this meme that was circulating about how Romanians are thieves, basically. So there was that stereotype of, Romanians steal, and it was kind of like, oh, is a Romanian going to steal my wallet? I don't remember exactly what the meme or the joke was about, but I didn't find it funny. Like I didn't think that it was something to even, because some stereotypes or some things, sometimes when your friends say it, maybe you laugh it off and it's just like, okay, it's just a joke between friends and it's not something that's meant to kind of insult you or hurt you or something that's actually bad. But I didn't really find that kind of stereotype funny because that was the extent of what they knew about Romania. And this is the only contact that they had had with Romania. They didn't know anything else. There was no, oh, this is a joke, but I'm actually culturally aware about this country's history, or I know where these people come from. Like, they didn't. And that was kind of the only thing that they knew about it. And I felt kind of disappointed that this was the view that people in the West had about Romania. I thought that it wasn't fair. I still think it's not fair, and I introduced this frustration in my book as well. There's two characters in my book who are foreign journalists who come from England and America to Romania, and for a brief part of the book, you explore their perspective on a country that they have never seen before, that they don't know anything about. And to some extent, I wanted to represent the ignorance of such people who might go into foreign countries and their only contact with is what they've heard from other people or things that they have heard through stereotypes. And unfortunately, nowadays we see this in journalism still. So it's not just people who are, everyday people. There's also journalists who are not very aware about the countries that they're going to. And we're seeing so much kind of, biased stuff in the media. We're seeing biased reports. The best example that I can talk about is probably what we're seeing with Israel and Palestine, which is probably the most kind of biased piece of media that you see that when it's about Israel, it's, you use the words of defense and attack and really carefully picked out words. And then you see about Palestine and it's like terrorism, killing, brutal, murder, something that's going to lead you astray. And I think that a lot of times with countries like Romania, countries like, people that are not kind of in the West and they don't get this big visibility like America, Australia, England, if you're not one of these countries and you are on the other side of the world, you are going to have your history and your life written out for you by these people who are in control, unless you do something about it. And I know kind of I've gone off on a tangent here, but I feel really strongly about this. Like I genuinely feel frustration about this.
Look, the history. So I think I know an amazing example of. There are some good history teachers in Romania, and there was an example that I know from Romania who was this history teacher told a story and then made the guys in the class tell the same story again. And he's explained like you see that the way in which you tell the story it's always different because you have a bias. You always pick a side in every conflict. You always pick a side. Look, Faiza, I always said that I find it unbelievable that we have the same conflict between Russia and Ukraine and Israel and Palestine, and we judge them completely different. I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong. I'm just saying that it's unbelievable that we decided to pick a side which doesn't make sense if we put both together.
Yeah, I think any kind of conflict is wrong. Any kind of genocide committed is wrong.
Whether don't have to talk about that.
Yeah, whether it's on one side of the world or the other. And
doesn't matter.
It's really crazy how the media doesn't do that. There's always a very strong bias towards, he who shall not be named, and then
exactly
other people.
Yeah.
And it's so obvious. And until someone decides to speak up constantly about it and make it a point that this is not okay, it's gonna continue happening. And we're seeing it happening in real time. Because I've seen so many people that used to wonder while reading history books that how did we let the Holocaust happen? Another horrible thing in history. You're seeing it. This is how we let it happen. You're living
slowly, like small steps. They are never big steps. They don't start from today to tomorrow. They're only small steps. There are also that every of the small steps that we see in the US, for example, every small steps that you see happening all around the world, there are small steps in the right direction, in the same direction, not the same direction. But you see, we have another rabbit hole. But the problem is that media is there to make money.
Yes.
And the only way in which they can get more attention is by creating panic. And this is what they do at their best. They don't have any other thing except creating panic. And of course, they have the financial bias. Always, always, always. There is a guy who's pulling the strings, and you can see that in the news outlet in the US. You can see it in Romania as well. You can see it everywhere, everywhere. There is not such a thing as independent media meant to inform. No, it's either left, right. There's nothing in the middle.
Yeah.
And this is crazy. But yeah, it's biased with the opinions about the immigrants. And I tell you from
Oh
a
God.
guy living in Germany that it's so funny how, of course, in Germany I got rid of the stealing stereotype because those are for that the Polish guys are used in Germany. So
Okay.
whenever it's about stealing, we talk about the Polish guys, but I got everything else. So every possible. So I got used to it. I'm immune to it. I just move on, and that's it. I sometimes I make myself fun of them because otherwise you cannot survive.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think there is this wave of kind of this far right idea that anything that happens, you're gonna blame the immigrants for it. You're not gonna blame the 1% who are the richest people in the world who are
Look,
up top. If you don't see me for like another month, you know what happened to me if I disappear. By the way. But no, it's always there is all jokes aside, there is a strong bias towards immigrants, and I've seen that firsthand online, especially from the second that I've tried to promote books. It always goes back to, yes, but your ethnicity is this, and your parents are immigrants, and you're gonna destroy our country. Like, if you think that my doctor mom is gonna ruin your country, okay, whatever. But because I can understand when people say it to attack to insult and stuff. But I honestly, when I tell them, I've seen a lot of times that they say that I bet your parents, they came to steal and they came to do this. And I tell them, well, they came from education. Like, I've got a mom who's a doctor, or, I tell them that stuff. And so many times the people delete their comment, their original comment on stuff, because
of
they're just like,
course.
oh, okay, we're going to leave now.
Look, Faiza, I have 3, 4, 5 episodes. I don't know how many with people living in Spain. It's the wildest commentary section that I have for all the episodes. Go home, you are stealing our country. Because of you, everything is more expensive. It's the same thing that you hear in Romania. I invite you to go and read some of the comments, and I deleted so many of them because I find them offensive, not towards me, but towards my guests.
Yeah. Well, I see these kind of comments on my posts regularly. It's become
Yeah.
a thing. Like, it's
Yeah,
constant.
but
And
you just have to learn to ignore them, Faiza, because you should not let them take them down. They are the same people
you
always.
see, I talk a lot, and you can tell that I am the kind of person that if I think something and if I have something to say, I'm gonna say it. And a lot of times, the people, they say something that's so stupid that I have the perfect response, the perfect sarcastic thing to say. And sometimes it is difficult to not say something and, kind of laugh about it, because I think, like you said, that if you don't laugh about it, you're gonna end up feeling bad. So it's really important that you do make kind of a joke about it. Um, but I think this kind of idea I believe that it started with the whole "Make America Great Again," the whole MAGA thing, and the deportations
That
from
was the
Pakistan.
amplifier. That was the
That was
amplifier,
yeah, that was
Faiza. Not
kind
the
of the
started, but that was the amplifier.
the thing that made it go 100 times more, especially when the ICE deportation started. So they started deporting people who were not meant to be deported, and there was this whole thing that you need to send all the immigrants back. It doesn't matter whether you're legal or illegal. I mean, I was talking to someone in England, from someone from Poland, and they themselves are an immigrant, right? So they're from Poland, and they're I think they're born in England. So they have kind of this thing that, oh, I'm born there. And they actually said to me, looking me in the face, and they say, we should put every single Muslim on a boat, and we should send every single one of them back. And for a second, I was trying not to say something, because we're in a public setting, like, we're in a nice place. I don't want to, start, because I can start, shouting if I feel like it. But I said I'm not going to do that, and I just said this thing that if England started to do the same, sending every single immigrant back, I said to him, we'd be on the same boat, you and I. I mean, we'd actually be on the exact same boat. And this person didn't have anything to say after that. It was kind of, that was the end of the discussion. And the weird thing was that before I left this party, they came to me to say goodbye. And they said, you're going to go really far in life and you're going to do really well and you're going to have such a great, successful life and stuff. And it was kind of this almost like a backtracking thing from what they said previously, because, in front of so many people, they kind of got, an answer that they didn't know what to respond to. And things like that, a lot of times online when there's people that say something and I call them out for it and I say, okay, this is not okay. There's readers or people who follow me who say that, why are you being rude to this person? Or why are you trying to be mean to this person? But what a lot of people might not see is the layers of frustration that come from months and months of seeing the same thing from the same person again and again and again until you finally don't have the patience for it. Like, I'm at the end of the day, I am not going to sit down and just tolerate that kind of verbal abuse nonstop on my page if I feel like it's something that I don't want there. So yeah, that's another side to it.
I said it in one of the previous episodes. My house, my rules. If you come in my house, you have to respect my rules. This comment section is my house. If you want to be in my comment section, you have to respect my rules. Otherwise, I might answer in a way that you don't like it.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, you have the option to go.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah.
It's so easy.
Going, or a lot of times you see that they have a public account and you can see information about them.
Yeah.
And there's like a lot of times the craziest thing, I think I've experienced more Islamophobia than racism. So there's like, I think an even kind of stronger hatred towards Muslims than there is towards just regular immigrants. And a lot of times there's people who comment, you're a Muslim, you're this, you're that, and just like a lot of really bad things about, religion. And I look on their profile and their most recent holiday is Dubai. It's going to be Qatar. It's going to be Istanbul. It's going to be, some other country that is predominantly
the
Muslim
definition of hypocrisy.
or Middle Eastern. They're just like living the dream life in Dubai or living the dream. Like, if you hate Muslims so much and you really, really want to stand by it, why are you going in their country and visiting it?
Look, I've had a lady commenting to one of the, as I said, some of the Spanish guest video, like 7, 8 different comments for different timestamps of the video. And I answered to, I think, 3 or 4 of them. And then to the 5th one, I said, lady, I think you just need a hug.
Yeah.
I just think you have a really big problem. You should find someone in your life that likes you, because that's your biggest problem now. And in some of the cases, Faiza, I know I speak like an old guy. I'm sorry for that, but I am old.
No.
But I keep saying that they try to get their frustration out onto you.
Oh yeah.
It's nothing else. This has nothing to do with they are just hating everyone, and they find
anyone.
They hate everyone. I'm pretty sure they are those guys that doesn't speak to their neighbors and so on, and they find an additional reason on that they can justify their hate with with the Islamic thing. So that's why I think it's sad when I'm saying this, but I keep saying, guys, you just need a hug. Just try to smile one day in your life and see what's happening.
Yeah.
And then she tried to reply, but there was also like it's hard to explain their level of frustration, their level of unhappiness, if they decide to go to a video of yours and say that you should go home because you want to steal or your parents want to steal. Why?
I know it's crazy because sometimes it's the same, like 5 or 6 accounts. I already know their names. I already know their profile picture, and they come like on a weekly basis. I think they have like a set, we're going to come back in a week's time or once a day or whatever to see what's been posted and come back to every single video. what they don't realize is that they've given so much engagement sometimes that they don't
Yeah.
realize that it's boosting the video even further or the post even further. Like the fact that you give me comments on every single video one by one, or you comment 10 times on the same video, that's going to push it out even more. That's not going to, put it back somewhere. You're doing the
But they
opposite.
want to hurt you, they want to hurt you. They're there and they think, I will hurt them now. No, you don't. Thank you, but no, you don't. Like, no?
Do I look like the kind of person that would be
Yeah,
hurt
no.
like that?
But now, come on. I try to teach my son every time when he's doing something to think about what he's expecting as a result. And that's why I always try to do that on my own as well. And even when you go somewhere and leave a comment, what's the expectation for someone to comment? You are right, my parents were coming here to steal. I'm sorry for that. We're
Sorry,
all
you
going
got
home
me.
now. Yeah, you got me. We are all going home now. What do you expect?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, or if you tell someone go back to your country or go back home, do you expect that they're like looking for the next flight to go
I say,
back somewhere?
oh, I'm sorry. Did I bother you? I didn't know. Oh, let me just book a flight and leave. Like,
Let me just leave my entire life behind and go. Sorry
yeah,
for making you uncomfortable.
yeah.
Yeah,
Let's
I've
move.
had sorry for
Please.
interrupting you.
No.
I know
Please.
that there's there's a more kind of light things that you see, just general comments, but there were times in my life when I actually had to go to the police, and this is a little bit more serious when it
Oh,
comes
sorry
to
for that.
direct threats, especially before, book events and book signings when people know exactly where and when I'm going to be at that specific place and stuff. There were a lot of kind of people that started sending, oh, I'm going to come, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And in that case, I want to say that I know that a lot of people say that the police systems in Romania are not great and the public systems are not great, but in my case, they were very helpful. So I had like a lot of support from that side. And I just want to say that if there are people who might be watching this podcast who are experiencing any kind of, similar things and they're deciding whether they want to get help or support for whether that's, for your own mental health, if you feel like you're being bullied and you want to find some kind of support, or if you genuinely feel that, you're going to get threatened by someone and that might become a reality and you want to get help, I would definitely encourage people to go and try and do that. If there's like a serious threat to someone, it's really important to bring awareness to those kind of things too.
Such a good piece of advice because I think everyone is afraid that why should I go because then nobody will help me. But this is a good bit of advice to say that police is helping you and authorities are reacting because it's really important for your own safety. It's really important to know.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Faiza, to move back to the book, because I think if we could dig on every rabbit hole, we'll make it the longest podcast that I've made until now, because I see we both like to chat.
We do.
Faiza, for someone who has not read the book yet, how would you describe the art of making a forgotten cup of tea in 1 minute?
Okay, I'm under pressure now.
No, you're not.
Okay.
No, you're not. Just pretend it's the minute as long as you want to.
Okay. Well, I think imagine a love letter to Romania's worst and best moments and worst and best qualities. That's the way that I pictured the story when I wrote it. I wanted to present the history and the moments in history that defined what modern day Romania looks like, because we've been so influenced by communist times and things from there. Think about every kind of different person that you can think of, like a mother, a brother, a son, people that are born between making difficult decisions. These are all the different characters. There's multiple perspectives explored in the book. Every single character kind of gets their own chapter. They get to show you their own perspective on things. So you have a lot of kind of morally gray characters as well, people who don't know what they're supposed to be doing when they're put under tough conditions. But ultimately, it is a story about the human condition. What us as people, when we're put through the most difficult moments of life and the most difficult times that are, whether they're because of historical stuff, whether they're because of political stuff, at the end of the day, it's kind of that human connection and finding that support even from strangers sometimes, which when you look at the stories of the revolution, how often people that didn't even know each other, they supported each other and they protected each other when they could. Ultimately, it is a story about that kind of human to human connection and bond.
now I understand why you picked the revolution, because that makes a lot of sense. That defines the Romania how it looks today,
Oh,
the
absolutely.
revolution. And I think
Absolutely.
that's a really corner moment for the whole development of Romania. I think that's a really nice thing that you chose the revolution there.
Yeah, it's, I think, especially when you are in Timișoara, I don't know if you've ever been to Timișoara, but if you go in the city center and you can still see the bullet marks. And I know that they were trying to renovate some of the buildings, but I hope that they didn't get rid of those marks because I think that stuff like that should be preserved. I think Romania as a country, we're not really good with valuing our own history and stuff. We don't really take care of it. I compare it to England because it's the only other comparison that I have about how, and this is amazing that the English people, they have preserved all of their important houses of important writers and historical figures and museums and everything. A lot of them's not even their own, and they've still preserved it really well because they have so many things from other countries, because of the British Empire and stuff. But still, they have preserved it and they've respected it and they've kept it. And I saw a Romanian author's house a few days ago on Facebook. I don't remember exactly who it was, but I had just seen in passing a video about how there was graffiti inside of it and it was abandoned and no one took care of it. No one cared that this was an important author's home and that maybe we should turn it into a museum or do something about it. And, I think looking at Timișoara, because of how recent these things happened, at least this city, it still has a lot of the marks of the revolution. You can still see, what happened. And even when you talk to the people who are from here and they lived here during that time, there's so many people that still can tell you about that moment. And I wish that that kind of stuff would continue being preserved, other historical moments of Romania as well. And that was one of the main things that I wanted to do for this book alongside educating people who probably don't know anything about Romania.
That's really important what you just said. So by the way, I have family in Timișoara, so I was there quite often as well. I don't know if it's still there, but in Cluj, unfortunately, they renovate the building, so the bullet marks are not there anymore. There was a building who had the holes still inside, and I always got chills when I passed by. I have to be honest, and I think that's something really sad that didn't is not there anymore. And yes, we have a really big problem in preserving the history. That's a really big problem of the Romanian culture. I don't know why it is, but you are absolutely right that it is unfortunately so. Faiza, you did not live through 89 or before communism. Did that make it harder for you to write about it, or you had a different kind of freedom when you wrote it?
No, I think I said at the beginning of this episode that the people in Timișoara, they remembered it enough to tell me from when I was really young. People
Mhm.
like there was a lady that used to take care of me when I was a kid. She was like my nanny, but because I didn't ever have real contact with my grandparents, I used to consider her my grandma. So I still refer to her as my grandmother. And
That's so nice.
yeah, she used to tell me so many stories about the stuff that happened during that time. And I had this in my head, kind of, I already had an idea of what it looked like. I don't think that it made it more difficult. Instead, I think I really enjoyed just like talking to different people, talking to people who were involved on the intelligence side of things, people who were involved in the actual revolution and seeing, different perspectives because I wasn't living it through the way that I would see it. Because if I think about something that's recent in my life, even if it's something like, I don't know, going to the store to buy ice cream, just as an example. If I go with my sister and I buy ice cream, maybe she sees that trip as a different thing. I see it as oh, this was a great store, and she sees, no, this was horrible. And then I have a different idea of it, and that's how I'm going to remember it forever. But now when I'm an outside person who hasn't been to the ice cream store, I ask different people, so what was your experience of it? And I get different sides of the same story. And I have a completely different idea and I try and present it to people in the most kind of unbiased way. And that was kind of my experience with writing about this. I used to enjoy the interviewing process as well, kind of talking to people about different things. It was literally like, this discussion, and I used to just go in with, oh, okay, so what did you do? How did you do this? And it was really good. From family friends to other people who I don't know very well, but I still kind of got to talk to them. It was a really fantastic experience, just kind of reliving it through them.
It's really nice that you did a lot of research, and I think talking with a lot of people, you discover a lot of wounds as well inside their stories, because I think they had a lot of good and bad stories from before and also during the revolution process. But I want to ask you, how, when you write about a real historical event, which is also somehow directly a real historical wound for some people, how do you make it not to transform the pain into entertainment?
So I think this is a really good question, by the way.
Thank you.
This is a really good question, and I honestly, I wish that I would have spoken about this kind of thing in my book events before as well, because I think this is so important. I see a lot of times that historical stuff is glorified almost, and one of the things about my book, just to kind of give you a little bit of context, because I know you haven't read it, but there are chapters dedicated to Nicolae Ceaușescu's perspective as well. So he appears as a character in the book. And this one, this was a kind of a decision that I had to take really carefully to decide, am I going to include him? Am I not? Because of the pain that it's caused people. But when you talk to people in Romania about Ceausescu specifically, I cannot speak about other historical events, but when you talk about Ceausescu, there are people who are still kind of nostalgic for those times, people who miss those times a lot. And then there are the people who lived it in a really brutal way. And I wanted to present both sides because neither side is wrong, in my opinion. I have my own opinion on communist Romania, reading, various things. And I think that from my perspective, it was horrible. And I don't think that it's something that was, that you should be nostalgic for. But there are real people who feel that way. And who am I to tell them that they shouldn't feel that way when they lived it and this is how they feel? But by introducing so many perspectives, so you have a mother's perspective, you have her brother's perspective, you've got her father, you've got another person who is a double agent, you've got so many different characters who get their own chapters. I didn't want to tell the story from one perspective. You get so many different characters who in their own chapters meet other people who are experiencing Romania differently. So there is an element of pain to it, but there's also an element of people who actually did live good lives during that time. There are people who did not suffer and did not see pain, but we see the reasons why a lot of these people did not feel pain and why they didn't have this kind of a bad life. And then you see the other side of people who lived really secretly and they had fear and they couldn't do the things that they wanted to do. So it's not as black and white as people make it sound, especially nowadays. I think people, to me especially, they say to me that if you have written a book about communism and it's against communism, you are definitely a fascist, which is really crazy to say to someone because it's not that simple. It's not that black and white that if you're not this, you're that. These are man-made labels that, there's just like, oh, if you're not that, you're that. If you're not this, you're this. And I'm so sick of it. I mean, I'm not a fascist. Leave me alone, first of all. And second of all, it's, there's this kind of, you need to have a realistic view on the real pain that was there from the people. And you can criticize communism while not supporting fascism or capitalism or other ideologies that are also bad. You can say
Or the other way around. You can also do the other way around, the same, and you don't have to be a communist.
Yes,
Communist, yeah.
you can, and exactly. You can say that there were some things during the communist times that were good. You can say that things like giving people free homes, that had a benefit. That's true. A lot of people did get free homes, but then again, a lot of people had to stand in queues and starve because there were not that many resources in the country. Also true. So both things can be true. It doesn't need to be taking sides. This is a very childish thing where people are forced to, you need to pick your camp and you stick with it and this is what you're going to do. It's not that simple. It's just not that easy.
That's a really good point. My subjective opinion is always, I think that in communism, people were not responsible for their life. And I think that was really helpful for the mental health. And it's not something that people are talking about, but this is my understanding until now, that you always could say, I tried to on the party, I tried there, and I didn't get the result, so I'm not responsible for it. It is how it is. And I also noticed something else, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, because you talk to a lot of people doing the research. I always feel that this nostalgia is not for communism. There's nostalgia of most of the people who are old today,
Yes.
and they were young back then.
Yes,
Is that your
absolutely.
feeling as well?
Yes, that was something that I noticed as well, because they were telling me, oh yeah, I was young and I used to do this, and I was just like, you can still do that, but it's just your age now is different. You're in a different stage of your life. You're not gonna do the same things that you were doing when you were 25. It's not gonna be the same, it's not gonna be the same life. You don't have the same responsibilities anymore. It's, you're a completely different stage, and that doesn't have anything to do with communism. It's about how you were back then mentally, as a person. And I feel like the best proof that I felt for this kind of feeling is that even us as people in our own lives, let's say that you had a really, really good friend and something happens between you and this friend, and then a really bad fight, let's just say, and you don't speak to them for years. Maybe in a few years' time, you remember the memories with them still fondly, even if something bad happened along the way and you did have something that makes you also remember the bad parts, but you do think of those moments fondly. And I felt that thing, with friends or with people that I used to know, and then something bad happens, but you still reflect on those times, but it's not because of anything else. It's about the kind of person that you were when you were with them. It wasn't about other people, it's always about how you felt.
Absolutely. And I think that's important to say that it's always depending on your experience, your feelings, and your feelings are defining for what you have. It doesn't have that much to do with the surroundings, but with your feeling in that moment. And
Yes.
that makes a lot of sense. Faiza, did you had someone telling you, you should not do that, you are not able to understand what happened there, and you cannot understand?
While I was trying to write the book, no. But after I published the book, yeah, there's so many people who told me you should not do this. How dare you write about a country and try and give it representation? How dare you? But while I was writing, I was interviewing people who had lived through those times. So, remember that these are people who actually were born, raised in Romania, and lived through the revolution and went through these things and lived through hell and back and came back and still are living through it. These people were encouraging me every step of the way to continue writing. And they would tell me as much as I wanted. I mean, they dedicated so much of their time to tell me. There's like one of my mom's best friends. She gifted me some of her father-in-law's books for about Ceausescu and about that time of Romania. And there's similar things where people, like, they were actually really encouraging. Like, they would give me books, they would tell me, they would talk to me, and they would like, even right now, if I called up one of my mom's friends, or if I would call up someone that I know who I used to interview back then for my book, and I would say, oh, can you tell me about this? They would gladly still support that. And I remember that one of the people that I spoke to, this was like someone that had a very kind of crucial involvement with the revolution. And I remember that he said to me, he said, I wish you never stop doing what you're doing. And that kind of stuck with me, because I was just like, okay, there are people who are very supportive. And that was kind of the first time that I thought about, okay, this is something that can have an impact long term. But after I published the book, God, were there people who said no? Oh, there's people who, first of all, it's my age. I'm only 22 years old. And there's always just like you're 22, how can you write? What do you know about writing? Then there's you're a different ethnicity. What would you know about writing? I bet there's I bet you don't even speak Romanian. I bet you never even, there was a guy who asked me that if I went with him to my old neighborhood in Timișoara, would anyone actually recognize me there, or am I making it up that I lived there? It's nothing surprises me anymore. And there's obviously also the thing that people think that if you didn't live through that time, you shouldn't write a book about
You're
it.
not allowed to, yeah.
But historical fiction at its core, at its definition, is a book that is written about a historical time that the author may not have even lived, but is writing a story about characters who are living through that time. They're going through different things while a historical thing is taking place. I mean,
but to be able to understand that, you have to have read some books in your life, and that's hard, because that's not the case for a lot of people doing this.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the biggest problem.
By this logic, I don't know if you watched The Odyssey yet, the film, The Odyssey.
Not yet. I want to,
It's
but I haven't managed to do it
it's
now.
really good, but by this logic, if Christopher Nolan couldn't have lived during that
Of
time,
course,
he
then
should
he
not
has no
make.
opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't live during the time
Yeah,
this was
for sure.
happening. So why should he make a film about it? I mean, this is so stupid. It's a really stupid logic, you know. I don't
Yeah,
understand.
but
And like you said, when you do this, you don't really think about it.
exactly. So, look, there are two things. You cannot go into those opinions, because those are usually people who have no idea what literature means. They have no idea what the lyric genre is. They have no idea what anything is. So that's something we should just ignore and move on. Life is amazing. Like, not for
Yeah.
those people. The title of the book, Faiza, is beautiful, but also a bit strange. But this is just my opinion. Okay, I hope I'm allowed to have an opinion.
Why. It will be strange.
Yeah,
When I
exactly.
tell you why.
Okay, then please tell me why.
So you know, Nicolae Ceaușescu's nickname was Ceașcă.
Yes,
So,
I know.
cup. And that's because a lot of people ask me, are Romanians, do they drink a lot of tea? Is there a cup of tea? And I was like, no, they don't drink that much tea. But the whole reference to Ceașcă and forgetting, and also there's a few metaphors that happen in the book about, you know, not just Ceausescu, but also Romania as a country, how it's sitting at the edge of the table, forgotten, kind of like the cup of tea. But the main thing was this wordplay with Ceausescu's nickname, the Ceașcă, and I was just like, this cup thing. I really like that, the cup thing. That's a good reference.
I like the Ceașcă one, but I want to ask you: is the forgotten part like a symbol for the interrupted life that Ceașcă had?
Well, that too, but also the kind of the forgotten way that Romania stood kind of still at the edge of time. Kind of, it was just on its own. And when you look at other communist countries, if you see Poland, for example, and how they developed after communism and what kind of different communism they had, if you look at Romania, it really was standing alone. It did have its own kind of different vibe to it. It had different rules, it had different lives. It was something, you know, forgotten altogether, because if you try and find any kind of media releases about Romania from the 70s or 80s in the West, there's pretty much nothing. If you try to see anything from the West about, you know, their perspective of Romania. And I kind of thought that mixing these two things was kind of cool. I know it's a really long title, but I wanted to keep it. It was when it came, it was just like, that's the one that we're sticking with.
That's I mean, it's beautiful as well. It's strange, but it's beautiful as well itself. And when you get to understand, it makes even more sense. Look, I grew up after communism, so I'm born in '84. I do have a part before, but I also have most of my life growing up after the communism. The shadow of the communism was still there. Nobody explained it, but you could feel it in how they were stacking food, distrusting the system, avoided certain topics.
Absolutely, it's still it happens.
Do you find that silence interesting as a writer?
I find the behavior very, very interesting. The
patterns.
Yes, and the psychological reasoning behind it. And I think the best example I can give here is my Romanian grandmother, who I'm telling you about. I remember that when there were any kind of elections, even if it was a small local election, so it really does not matter what happens in a grand scheme of things. It's not going to be something life-changing. It's not going to be something really, really significant. So think about the smallest kind of elections. And if I would ask her over the phone, you know, who are you voting for this time? She would say, no, we're not speaking of this on the phone. This is not on the phone. You're going to speak about this when we meet in person, because they are listening. And I was like, who are they? Who cares? No one cares who you are voting for. And she was like, no, you don't know. They listen. They're still listening. And this kind of stuff, you know, this mentality of, you know, saving heat, or saving, you know, doing, we call it economisim, any kind of thing we have to save, we have to keep. And I saw a brief kind of kind of just shadow of that during pandemic as well, when people were kind of stocking up, thing after thing, thing after thing. And yeah, I think the reasoning behind it is interesting because you can so obviously see that this is generational trauma that's being passed on from one generation to the next. And the habits and the reasoning behind it, all of these things, you can so obviously see that these people still have trauma from this, but no one's gonna talk about it or accept it as that thing. But you can see it in the patterns for sure.
I have a really good friend that I meet every once in a while in Germany, and we meet for a barbecue. And usually we buy something, and they are buying something, and we meet together and make a grill together. And it's always too much, always. And I keep asking him every time, like, Lucian, why are we doing this? And he told me something which makes a lot of sense. He said, in our mind as Romanian, the food will be ended one day. And that's why we are always afraid of. That's what we are always afraid of.
Yeah.
Because it could be that it's done and we have nothing else to eat.
Yeah, and you see this during the holiday seasons when people are buying food. They're going with 2 trolleys. Like I'm seeing people with 2 full trolleys full of food. Where are you taking it? Who is going to eat that?
Look, I moved to Germany, and in Germany all the stores are closed on Sunday. It's the standard. So there's like a rule. There's nothing open on
Yeah,
Sunday.
England's kind of the same with timings. So I found it strange because if in Romania, everything's open until 10 every single day. No, it's
every day.
Every day.
Exactly.
And when I went to England and I saw the same thing, and it was like, oh, today is Saturday. It's gonna close at 6. I was like, what do you mean it's closing at 6? It's why? What's why? And it's like, oh yeah, it's a weekend, and that's not a thing. What are you talking about?
They have also families. I don't care. I want to buy bread in the evening.
Who cares about your family? I need to go.
So, Sunday, everything is closed. And when we moved here, the first adaptation shock was not to buy 7 loaves of bread on Saturday, just not being afraid of being without bread on Sunday. So it's like, it's something that you get used to.
Yeah.
But it's hard at the beginning.
Yeah. I struggled with that in England, to be honest, because I live in a very rural area, so it's countryside. It's very, it's in Romanian we have an expression, cucamăcăi. Cucamăcăi. That's exactly how I can explain it. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's just countryside. It's gorgeous. It's stunning. It's beautiful. But there's no pharmacies around. And that was like the first thing that I thought when I moved there was that, God forbid, I need a paracetamol at night. Where am I gonna go get a paracetamol? Or the fact that there is no non-stop pharmacy, by the way, which to me is crazy because Romania has them everywhere. Like everywhere there is a pharmacy because everyone is scared that they're gonna die. And then you have the non-stop, the mini markets, the non-stop markets in case like you want to go and get something in the middle of the night. Where do you go,
Oh, this made my day. Like with the pharmacy was also a hard one. I do know what you mean, but the pharmacy was also a hard one for me because you always think, okay, how can I not have it? And then you find the concept. In Germany, there's actually a concept in Germany. There are rules for everything. There's concepts for everything. So there is a rule for the on-service pharmacy. That means you have always, like in a rotating model, a different pharmacy which is open during the night and in the weekends.
Okay.
So every week is a different one, which makes a lot of sense from my point of view. That means the service is there, but you need to drive a bit more.
Yeah.
But until we find that out, that was complicated because you need to find a certain website where you are found. That's complicated.
Yeah.
This made my day.
Yeah,
it's so good.
It's really weird because we have the mall in Timișoara, so we have Julius Mall, which Julius Mall. Everyone goes to Julius Mall, and if you know Julius Mall, you know that it's open even on Christmas Eve. So if you forgot to buy someone a present for Christmas, you can go there on Christmas Eve and you can find stuff. Or our local Lidl. I remember last year or this year during Easter. My next door neighbor in Timișoara, he calls me very seriously. He doesn't call me very often unless there's something important. And he calls me and he's like, you know Lidl, the one near us. And I was like, yeah. He's like, the raspberries, there are 6 RON. Go and get them. Go and get them. And this was the day before Easter. So he's saying that, there's so many offers. It's the day before Easter. The raspberries, go and get them. They're very cheap and they're very good. Just go, run, run. And I was just like, this guy doesn't call me unless there's something important. So clearly to him, this was really meaningful. He was like, you must go and please.
Because we are afraid that the food is going to be over. I told you before. Yeah. It's the same cycle. That's our generational trauma. We are always afraid. That could be the end.
Yeah. If we are ever in a zombie apocalypse, Romanians are going to survive.
Absolutely.
Everyone else.
Absolutely. My grandma had a room full of zakuska, so I think that's gonna last forever. So.
It's not even like I don't know. Maybe some people who don't know Romania, maybe they think that we're just being really tight, or we're like we want to keep everything. Romanians are so generous. Like during holiday seasons, you are not gonna have an empty fridge. We do not have space in the fridge. And note that my family is Muslim, so we don't really celebrate Christmas, but our neighbors celebrated, so we
You have to.
Yes, exactly. But their generosity, they know that they respect that we don't eat certain things, and they will always accommodate for it, which is something that I'm so appreciative of. But they know that I like cozonac. They're gonna bring me cozonac. They know I like salată de vinete. They're gonna bring salată de vinete. And it's not one lady, because all of my mom's friends, they know that she likes this. So I'm gonna have 3 cozonacs. I'm gonna have this many, salad. I'm gonna have this. I'm gonna have that. It's always like not just one thing. It's gonna be multiple. It's always gonna be exaggerated.
That was I had such a good laugh. I have everybody's having the same, because that was such a good description of the Romanian culture. Faiza, writing the book is one thing, but publishing, marketing, selling, building an audience, that's another job. How did you publish it? Did you went indie, or did you do it with Cărturești?
Oh no, I went independently, but Cărturești, they helped a lot with events. They always hosted all of my events, and I'm so grateful to them, because I know that so many bookstores, they're not eager to bring in new authors. But I was literally so I've got another novel. This is not my first novel. I've got another book that I wrote last year. And when I published that book, I went to Cărturești and I said, hey, this is my book. I'm a first-time author. I'm publishing independently in England. I don't know what to do. I don't know how this process is. And they ordered copies of the book. They accommodated for, a launch event. They had an event in their bookstore for me. And whenever I go to them and I say, I think at this point they're already sick of me, because they know that, oh God, she's coming again. But every single time that I asked them, can we do an event here? Can we have this? Can we do that? They were so open and so nice about it. So I think that played a really big part, the fact that they were so open. Because if they were those kind of bookstores that are just like, oh, we don't want new authors, we don't care who you are, it would have been a different experience. But Cărturești is led by young people. There's so many young people that work there. And I make most of my friends at these events. So a lot of my friends are now people who work at Cărturești, or people who I met through the events. But the actual publishing, I published independently in the UK. It wasn't necessarily a difficult journey. I researched a lot about it, how, what you're supposed to do and how it works. So I wouldn't say that it was difficult. The marketing can be difficult to some extent, especially because you don't have the support of, you're not some big author that's launching. So at the beginning it can be difficult, but consistency is the key. I know this is really cliche, but consistency for any kind of marketing and for any kind of work is key. And that's kind of what helped me as well, alongside events.
I have to say this positive feedback is the first time that I get it from an indie author, and I kind of like that, because I like your positivity, Faiza. I think that's really important. Both of your books were independent, right?
Yeah. Both of my books are launched independently, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I like having the rights to my own work, and this is because I'm doing film adaptations for the books as well. And having the rights to my own work means that I can do pretty much what I want to do with my own project, and no one can tell me that I'm not allowed to do this. And for a story like the Romanian Revolution, I feel like if I sold it to a big studio, who knows who the actor is going to be? Who knows who the main
You are
Romanian
not in
lead is
control.
going to be? Exactly. It's going to, and you don't know if they're going to preserve the culture, if it's going to be the same. And it's a really important story to so many people. I mean, there were, people who are victims of the revolution. There's people who gave their lives for this thing. And I think a story like this needs to be done with respect. But other than that, I feel like a lot of indie authors, the mistake that they make is that they position themselves as indie author. That's like, oh, I'm an independent author and I do this independently, which is, it's the wrong move, I think, because sometimes it can come across on social media, you can come across as desperate, that you're begging people to give you a chance because, oh, poor me, I'm independent. When it shouldn't be the case. It should be like, I'm independent. I own my own work, and this is why I'm independent. But I am an author. I mean, it doesn't matter what kind of an author you are. You are an author. And that's like one of the things that a lot of people don't do. They're just like, oh, I'm an independent author. Please buy my book. And that's just like, okay, why should I buy your book just because you're an independent author? You haven't given me a reason to buy your book. But when you say, I am an author, I own my own work, it doesn't matter who I publish with, but you can buy my book everywhere anyway. This is what it's about. This is why I wrote it. People see passion behind it. People see the reason behind it. And that's what sells. It's not going to be, you don't need to beg people kind of to buy your book, which is, I feel like that's kind of the negative aspect of independent authors and why they are in the, wrong situations.
Do you think there is because I see a confidence in you that I haven't seen it in anyone else, and I like that.
Thank you.
And I want to ask you, do you think that this beg, because I do agree with you, sometimes it feels like someone is begging you to buy that. Do you think it's because they are not really confident that what they wrote is marketable, is sellable, is good, or something like this?
I think for years we've been taught that independent means that you're a failure, that if the traditional house didn't want your book, you're a failure. For me, it was just like, I don't want to go with a big company. For me, I didn't try to publish traditionally. I never tried it. I didn't want it. And it was because of the film part that I wanted the rights to the film. I'm not giving it to someone. I've seen so many authors that publish with big companies and then their book rights get taken away and given to someone else and they don't have any say in this. And I'm not risking that. But I think, yes, to some extent, it can happen that authors don't they probably have tried publishing traditionally and then they view themselves as a failure because the traditional houses, maybe they don't find that it's suitable for them, maybe it's not commercial enough, and that's why they have kind of this confidence kind of goes down, and it's just, oh, okay, now I'm a failure, I need to rely on people's mercy to buy my book, which shouldn't be the case. I always think that the readers should connect with you as an author. They should connect with your story. And if you have a good story to tell, it doesn't matter how you were published. They're going to want to buy your book. People don't care that you're published independently or not. They genuinely, they don't care. Their lives are not affected by it. They want to read a good story. And it is a matter of confidence. I think that can be the case for some authors because we've been taught to think that we're failures if we go independent.
I have to say, could be that you're right with this, the fact that the house didn't accept your book and that's why you're a failure. But I really have an example that I know myself. I don't know if you heard about David Goggins. He wrote, I think his first book was called Can't Hurt Me. The guy was a SEAL, was a Navy SEAL, and his life story is kind of crazy.
It sounds very
interesting
familiar.
as well.
Maybe I've seen something about it because it sounds very, very familiar.
It could be that you have seen him on social media, but his both books are amazing. So I read both of them multiple times, and I have to say they are motivating. And he was rejected by all the houses, and he did publish them by himself, and he's a multimillionaire now. So I would say that doesn't really fit with the failure story because he rejected some offers as well because they were too small, and then he did a publishing house by himself, and then he published independent, and he's a successful author now at the moment. So
yeah,
I would say that doesn't really fit 100%.
No, I think I've spoken to many authors who they're published independently and they get one rejection and then they are kind of set back by it. I had so many rejections from people when I reached out to them for certain things. And I don't mean publishing because I never reached out to people for traditional publishing, but for maybe I reached out to a bookstore and I said, hey, can we do an event? And they never responded. I mean, okay, that what am I gonna do? Sit down and cry about it and say, oh my God, my life is ruined? Or on the film side of things, if you try and work in the film industry, that's really gonna humble you because you rarely ever hear back from someone. They are gonna humble you. So if you reach out to the agent of an actor, or production company, they usually just send like one line replies. There's not even a hello or a goodbye. There's just like a no thank you or a yes or whatever. And I think that kind of an experience really does make you realize that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's really easy to, I think a lot of people also like making up excuses. So it's also just like, oh God, this person rejected what I wanted to do. So now this is my reason to not do it. And they needed an excuse to not do it. It doesn't matter. It's a setback, but they act like it's the end of the world. And honestly, if I would have done that, I would not be sitting here and talking to you either, because I so many times there's stuff that has taken away from motivation. I mean, I know you said that I feel like I have a positivity to me. A few weeks ago, literally, I was, feeling really sad because I had read some of the comments on some of my posts, there was something specific there that made me really upset. And for a moment, I was just like, okay, do I let this bring me down, or do I use this to do better, do better than the person that is trying to do something like this? So you're going to have days and days. You're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days. The important thing is that you continue having those days. That's the most important part.
Look, podcast host here, I have to say that rejection is part of my life since I started this podcast, because I think
So you can relate to it.
absolutely 100%. I think I get 10% answers from all the messages I'm sending. So I'm okay. I got used to it. I never understand why you are not able to say no, but it's okay. That's okay for me.
Yeah.
I got used to it. Yeah. You mentioned movies a few times, and you mentioned it a few times, Faizah, and you mentioned at the beginning as well that you wrote it as a script.
Yes, I did.
And I want to ask you, what is the plan there now?
Well, it's getting adapted into a feature film. So that's always been the plan. For me, long term, and just my goal has always been cinema. It's always been working in film, and books are just kind of an addition to that. I really enjoy doing books, but I would, really love to continue this into film, the same storytelling thing, but try it in a different medium. I'm a big fan of films. I think you can see posters and all sorts. This is just like half of it. You can't see the rest of my room. I've got The Godfather over there and a few other ones, but I'm a big fan of films. There were times in my life when I would watch at least like a film a day. I still try to do that whenever I can, but I'm big on film. And I've been so passionate about this from a young age that I wanted my own stories to always be for the big screen. They're intended for the big screen. That's what they need to make it to. And I wrote it as a script because I planned it out as a film first. And I saw that it's really, for an independent film to get funded without any kind of support behind it, it's really, really difficult. And I'm not the kind of person that, like I said, I'm not going to wait around for the rejection. So I decided to write a book. I decided to adapt it into a book. And I think that was a really good decision because it's gained an audience, and there's people that want to see it become a film now. It's become, it's a different kind of project. And right now it's currently in development stages, so we are still sorting out a lot of the main details. The development part takes usually longer than the production stages because this is where you plan out every single detail. But yeah, so far it's cool. I'm really enjoying the process. I'm really enjoying the occasional rejection, the occasional acceptance. It's going well. It's fun. That's probably the most important thing for me, that I would say that it's fun.
That's the most important. Absolutely 100%. As long as it's fun for you, you'll find also people that it's going to be fun for.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's the most important. Yeah. Faiza was a surprisingly fun discussion for me. So I have to say I usually go in the meantime with no expectations inside the discussions, because there's sometimes I had a good feeling after our initial talk, but it's always dependent on the stage of the person. If they are in a good mood, got in a good mood, they had a good day or bad day. And I have to say, I didn't went inside I did went inside without no expectation. I have to say I really had a fun conversation
Oh, I'm so
and
happy to hear
inspiring. I have
that.
to say,
I'm very happy to hear
and
that. Same for me. I really had a really good time because we laughed, we talked serious stuff, but also
exactly,
I think there's also kind of having the same background. You understood some of the things that I was trying to carry as well.
absolutely,
So yeah, I really had a good
absolutely.
time. Thank you so much.
Faiza, before we wrap it up, I have some two more questions and a small list of rapid fire, always tailored on the guest. This is what I like to do. I'd like to put some thought into it before we do this. But I have two questions about the book still. What do you want Romanian readers to feel when they read your book?
I want them to feel represented because I'm one of the people that definitely believes that the power of representation in the media is really important. Especially when I was a kid, in the early 2000s, you didn't really have that much representation for brown people. So if I would watch cartoons and I didn't really understand the multicultural thing at that time, but if I used to watch TV, there were rarely ever brown people. Or if I read books, the main character was rarely ever a brown person. And now I'm really happy that there's more people that are, from these kind of backgrounds who have started making films or cartoons for kids or books that are even, adult books, just people, everyday books that you can read that have diverse characters. And I think that's really important because when you look at Romania, I'm sure that a lot of Romanian people feel the same way, that they probably watched TV or they watched something else and they didn't really feel like it was representing their culture or it didn't represent them as people. And as someone who has a really diverse mix, I do think that, feeling represented when you read something or when you watch something is a really unique feeling. And I hope that that's going to be the case for all the Romanian readers.
That's really nice. Really, really, really nice because I think this correct representation is something that it's hard to achieve. What do you want the non-Romanian readers to understand besides the cliche, that the not the typical cliche parts?
I hope, and I so far this has been actually a positive experience, that it's been successful, that a lot of people now want to visit Romania. There's a lot of people that say that they're interested in visiting Romania. I think for non-Romanians, I would say the main thing that I would wish for them is to come and experience it themselves, and meet the people firsthand, see what, Timișoara is about. If you're interested in Timișoara, if you not go to Bucharest, see the capital, see other things. We've got so much, we're the kind of country that we've got mountains, we've got seaside, we've got everything that you need. So I would say that for people from abroad, I would want them to have this desire to travel, and with the intent of, education and learning more about it with curiosity and openness. And I just hope that no matter where you're from, whether you're from Romania or from somewhere else, I just hope that we can start as people just be more empathetic towards one another.
Oh, that's I love that message. I love it because that's missing a lot. I have to say regarding traveling, Faiza, I made more Romanian travel guides in the last year than I wanted to for my work colleagues. So I have to say it's happening. I don't know if it's because of your book, but it could be. But I made a lot of travel patterns for my colleagues. I think we have Oradea, Timișoara, Iași, Cluj, Bucharest. We have a lot of nice cities, Sibiu, Brașov. And I think it's just the interest is increasing in the western side to visit Romania.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Now to the rapid fire question, Faiza. Timișoara in one word.
Oh, home.
Nice. Romania in one smell.
One smell, ciorbo.
I love it. I miss ciorbo de burtă.
Oh my God, I love ciorbo de burtă. For people who don't know, that's like a soup made out of the cow's stomach. It's delicious.
It's not as gross as it sounds.
Oh, it's amazing.
Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Nice. One Romanian word that you love?
This is really strange. I really love the word aprozar. I don't know why. I have a connection to the markets. I love aprozar. I don't know. That's like one of the.
Do you know the where the word comes from?
No.
Comes from? I don't know if you know Radu Paraschivescu. He has a podcast inside in Vorbitorinci.
Yes, I've heard of him.
Yeah, and he explained it's aprovizionare zarzavaturi. Apro zar.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's so obvious now that you say it. That's such an obvious word, yeah.
But that's a nice one. Tell me one book that you like to read and reread.
Read and reread. Oh, The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde is my favorite book of all time.
I haven't read it.
It's really good.
Thank you. And one film that you wish you have made.
Oh, this is difficult. One film that I wish I would have made, The Departed by Martin Scorsese.
Oh, that's a really nice
That's
one.
my favorite film.
Okay.
I've seen it more than 20 times. It's my favorite
You are
film of all
aiming high.
times. Well,
You are aiming really high.
I love everything to do with that kind of, I don't know, I really like the mafia films. So I've read so many books on, the Goodfellas, there's an actual book for it. Casino, there's an actual book for it. The Irishman, there's a book. I've read all of them just to get more about it. I know some people might find this concerning, like, why are you reading about organized crime? I'm not starting a mafia anytime soon, but it's really interesting. It's amazing. And I met a woman from Sicily a while ago who was doing research into the women of the mafia, the wives of the mafia
Nice.
bosses, and kind of what kind of role they had. And the more you learn about the different family members, the children, the wives, the more you see, it's so interesting. It's amazing. And I know that The Departed, that's not Italian mafia, it's Irish mafia, but it's a phenomenal film. I think it's a flawless film.
Absolutely. 100%. Can only recommend. Faiza, thank you so much for your time today. I think what I love the most about this conversation is that your book is not only about the revolution. It's about what survives after the history is happening, like family stories, like memories, and maybe one forgotten Czaszka of tea. Who knows? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation half as much as I did.
I had a really, really good time. I think you had some really, really great questions that were about the book as well and about the context behind it. And I think, it was partially like obviously the serious discussion kind of thing, but I also had a really good time talking to you, just getting to know you as well. You're really great.
Thank you so much. Same. I will link all the social media channels in the show notes captions, and also if you send me a link to the book, I will link the link to the book as well, so from where it can be ordered.
Thank
And
you so much.
I hope this will help. I really hope.
Thank
You
you.
deserve it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, Faiza.
Thank you too.